Picture this, it's 2:47 in the morning, sometime in the future, in the first completed district of the line. Phase 1 is operational, residents have moved in, and a chiller unit on level 36 has just failed. Not catastrophically, not yet, but the cascade has begun. The building management system reroutes cooling load to adjacent units. Within 90 seconds, 3 more chillers are running beyond capacity. A maintenance team is dispatched from the far end of the district. Internal transit is on. Overnight schedule, reduced frequency, skeleton staff. By the time they arrive, for residential floors have exceeded thermal comfort thresholds. Residents are waking up. Some are already posting about it. This is not a disaster. This is a Tuesday, and it raises a question that will follow the line for as long as it exists. If centralized control is the selling point, what happens the first day the system fails? The line exists, in concept, as perhaps the most ambitious urban proposal of the 21st century. According to NEOM's official materials, it is designed as a linear city stretching 170 kilometers across northwestern Saudi Arabia, approximately 500 meters tall, roughly 200 meters. No cars, No conventional streets. 2 mirrored facades enclosing a climate-controlled interior with the capacity, claims, to house up to 9 million people. The premise: a city built not outward, but in a line, density without sprawl, proximity without traffic, nature preserved because everything human happens within the structure itself. Why does this idea appeal? Because traditional cities often struggle with coordination at scale. Traffic costs billions in lost productivity. Sprawl consumes land and energy. Infrastructure built piecemeal is expensive to maintain. A centrally controlled city promises to solve these problems by design. Efficiency from day one. Safety monitored in real time. Energy systems integrated rather than bolted on. For governments seeking rapid modernization, investors seeking predictable returns, residents seeking convenience, the appeal is real. But if such a city fails, consequences are concentrated rather than distributed. A traditional city degrades gradually. A centralized city can fail suddenly, and the people inside have fewer options when it does. That tension between the promise of control and the risk of fragility is what this story is about. Let's be clear about what is known. That NEOM has released official specifications. Satellite imagery and credible reporting confirm early works. Site preparation, foundation activity. Multiple outlets, including Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal, have reported possible downsizing, disputed, though official. Statements push back. What we don't know: final phase lengths, confirmed transit technology, actual operating budgets, the real human cost of construction. Watchdog organizations have alleged significant worker fatalities, disputed. Saudi officials deny this. We won't present disputed figures as fact. We will ask what it means to build something this complex under these conditions. Because the line's biggest risk isn't construction, it's operations. Consider the mirrors. The design calls for mirrored facades stretching the structure's length. In renderings, the effect is striking. The desert reflected back, the building dissolving into landscape. But a mirror must remain clean to function. Northwestern Saudi Arabia experiences frequent sandstorms. Fine particulate driven by strong winds will abrade and coat any exposed surface. The line's facades will require cleaning, not occasionally, but continuously. In order of magnitude. Engineering estimates based on Gulf region high-rise maintenance suggest cleaning a single kilometer of mirrored facade could require roughly 50,000 to 200,000 liters of water weekly. Estimate, depending heavily on local dust load and target cleanliness standards, with annual energy costs for desalination, pumping, and robotic systems potentially in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per kilometer. Estimate. But true numbers at this scale are unknown. Nothing comparable has ever operated. Protective coatings for UV degradation and thermal cycling exist in laboratories. Their long-term performance across hundreds of kilometers of vertical surface under relentless desert conditions has never been tested. A mirror city can be built once. Can it be cleaned every week for decades? 1,200 kilometers away, an engineer sits in a materials testing facility. For 14 months, she's evaluated facade coating options. 19 formulations tested. 3 met reflectivity requirements. 1 met abrasion resistance. None met both. The timeline requires a decision in 6 weeks. She knows this coding will determine maintenance costs for 50 years. She knows her recommendation will be reviewed by people who've promised specific visual outcomes to stakeholders who've never cleaned a window in a sandstorm. This is the kind of decision that determines whether a megaproject becomes a functioning city or an extraordinarily expensive lesson. Then there's operating cost, the constraint that never appears in renderings. For a structure this complex, operating expenditure doesn't end when construction finishes, IT begins. Climate control, water systems, vertical transportation, security, cleaning, maintenance, emergency services, data, infrastructure, all running continuously, all costing money. Comparable enclosed environments, large airports, integrated resorts, climate-controlled facilities, typically see operating costs of $150 to $400 per square meter annually estimate. The line's interior volume is unprecedented if even the lower range applies. A single completed kilometer could require tens of millions annually just to keep running estimate. The true figure remains unknown until systems are operational. Investors understand this instinctively. You can fund construction once. Operations must be funded forever. What might actually get built? Credible reporting suggests phases. Phase 1, potentially 2 to 3 kilometers, estimate/unverified, would be a proof of concept. Residential, commercial, and operational systems working together. Phase 2 could extend further if Phase 1 succeeds. Phase 3, in theory, reaches the full vision. But here's the question investors quietly ask. At what point does Phase 1 stop being a phase and become the real project? A 2-kilometer enclosed district is not a 170-kilometer linear city. It's a very tall, very expensive building. It might be viable. It might be impressive. But it's a different thing than what renderings promise. Small components matter more than vision documents. Megaprojects don't fail from grand miscalculations. They fail because rebar couplers don't meet spec, expansion joints designed for wrong thermal ranges, fire doors arriving late and substituted with incompatible models. For the line to function, these must work correctly, continuously, at scale. Facade coatings resisting UV and abrasion, panel tolerances maintaining visual coherence, expansion joints handling thermal cycling, elevator components for 500-meter vertical travel, pumps and valves managing pressure across elevation changes, sensors monitoring air quality, temperature, occupancy, chillers maintaining climate control in extreme heat, and fire doors, thousands, closing automatically, reliably. Every time point one supplier delay cascades into months of schedule slip. 53 floors up, a family is deciding that they've been offered relocation to the line's first district. The father works in renewable energy. His skills are needed. The apartment is beautiful. Schools look excellent. Commute projections say 11 minutes. But his wife has questions. What if internal transit goes down? A normal city has detours. What's the alternative in a 170-kilometer corridor? What if their daughter has an emergency and elevators are at capacity? What if they want to leave for a weekend and exit points are kilometers away? They haven't said no. They haven't said yes. The renderings assume perfect compliance. Real residents don't. Picture a different moment. Fire alarm activates on level 42. Building management initiates evacuation. Residents descend via stairwells, proceed to lateral corridors. But the structure is 200 meters wide. Depending on building section, the nearest exterior exit could be a kilometer or more away. Assumption based on geometry. Stairwells fill, elevators lock at ground level, as is common in many emergency protocols. Transit halts. 12,000 people move on foot through a corridor designed for efficiency, not mass evacuation. In a conventional city, people disperse in all directions. Here, they move along one axis. The corridor becomes the bottleneck. How long does evacuation take? What if 2 incidents occur simultaneously? Engineering documents likely have answers, but until tested with real residents under real stress, those answers remain theoretical. A normal city has detours. What's the detour in a 170-kilometer corridor? Now, governance. The line isn't just construction. It's a jurisdiction. IT will have rules, enforcement, and collect enormous data, movement patterns, consumption, sleep schedules. For some, this is reassuring. Safety, predictability, efficiency. For others, it raises concerns. What happens to rule violators? Who adjudicates disputes? What legal framework applies? Saudi law, NEOM charter, international arbitration, one specific unknown, data governance. The line systems will generate continuous data on every resident. Who owns it? Who accesses it? Can it be shared with third parties or government? Can residents opt out and still live there? Public details are limited, unknown. For potential residents from jurisdictions with strong data protection, this ambiguity isn't abstract. It's a reason to hesitate. 4. Skilled professionals weighing relocation, unclear rights affect the decision. Investor confidence depends on rules. So what are the rules, and who enforces them? In a London conference room, a due diligence team reviews the line for a sovereign wealth fund considering project financing. They have renderings, projected returns. What they need is something else. If the operating company misses benchmarks, what recourse do lenders have? What's the liability framework for system failures? Can international arbitration be invoked? Or are disputes resolved solely in Saudi courts? The senior analyst closes her laptop. We can't model risk without a legal framework. Right now, we don't have one. That this isn't hostility, it's due diligence. Until questions have clear answers, significant institutional capital stays on the sideline. Was it worth it? This question will be asked for decades. Reasonable people will disagree. The case for it is substantial. First, it's a genuine attempt to solve problems conventional urbanism hasn't. Car dependency, sprawl. Fragmented infrastructure. If portions work, it could template dense, low-carbon development in harsh climates. Second, the project drives real innovation, materials science, vertical transit, building integrated energy, autonomous maintenance. That knowledge persists even if the project scales back. Third, investment transforms a region regardless. Roads, ports, desalination, workforce training have value independent of full realization. The case against is equally serious. First, risk concentration is extreme. Traditional cities fail gradually and locally. Centralized cities can fail suddenly and comprehensively. Absence of redundancy is both feature and vulnerability. Second, the governance model is untested and opaque. Residents asked to live under rules not fully public, data collection with unknown limits. Unclear dispute resolution. NOVO, B-roll. Third, operating costs may be unsustainable if OPEX projections miss significantly. Perpetual subsidy at scale could distort national priorities. Then there's the middle path. If the 170-kilometer dream shrinks, what would still count as success? Measurably, a functioning Phase 1 district might succeed if it meets benchmarks across 4 categories: reliability, climate control uptime above 98% estimate target, internal transit availability above 95% estimate target, system outages below 2 major incidents monthly estimate target, safety, full section evacuation under 45 minutes estimate target, emergency response under 8 minutes estimate target, third party, safety certification achieved, cost, facade maintenance below $40 per square meter annually estimate target, operating cost below $12,000 per resident annually estimate target, water consumption below 180 liters per resident daily estimate target, trust, resident satisfaction above 70% in independent surveys, positive net migration after year 3. These aren't official targets, they're measurable outcomes that would let independent observers say, this works, or it doesn't. That wouldn't be the announced project, but it would be real, inhabited, teaching lessons no rendering teaches. The line is being built, not completed, built, resources deployed, decisions made, thousands of workers on site, billions committed. Nothing this complex, in this environment, has been attempted. The unknowns aren't planning failures, they're inherent to doing what hasn't been done. In the end, the line is not a building. It's a question. Whether centralized systems can outperform emergent complexity. Whether a city designed from first principles can function better than one grown from centuries of human choices. Whether control is feature or vulnerability. We don't know the answer, and no one does. That's what makes it worth watching. But we should watch with clear eyes. The vision is extraordinary. The constraints are real. The people who may live there deserve both the ambition and the honesty. The desert doesn't care about renderings. The mirrors will need cleaning. Chillers will fail at 2:47 in the morning. Fire alarms will eventually sound in an occupied building. Somewhere, an engineer is deciding which coating to recommend. Knowing her choice will outlast her career. A family weighs whether to sign. An analyst closes a laptop, waiting for answers that haven't arrived. That's how cities are actually built. One decision at a time. Under constraints that don't negotiate, the line will teach us something, whether centralized control can work or cannot. And if it shrinks from the full vision, success may simply mean this: NOVO, B-roll, a district that operates safely, reliably, and transparently, year after year, proving that the idea, even at smaller scale, was worth building. We will learn. Question is whether we're watching closely enough to understand what it teaches.